Today is September the 8th. Today we'll read about Paul's arrest. What happened? Let's find out together as we read Acts 21 to 23. In the last 8 chapters of the book of Acts, things begin to happen very quickly. In Acts chapter 21, Paul leaves his third missionary journey. He returns to Jerusalem. When he gets to Jerusalem, the believers there inform Paul that he's been receiving bad press. In chapter 21, verses 20 and 21, they say to Paul, "You know, dear brother, how many thousands of Jews have also believed. They all follow the law of Moses very seriously. But the Jewish believers here in Jerusalem have been told that you're teaching all the Jews who live among them as Gentiles to turn their backs on the laws of Moses. They've heard that you teach them not to circumcise their children or follow other Jewish customs." That was not true. In fact, Paul himself continued to practice Judaism. He was in Jerusalem right at this time to fulfill a Jewish vow, the vow of the Nazarite that he had taken, avoiding strong drink and not cutting his hair. He would now go to the temple and he would be shaved at the temple in order to fulfill that vow. But these people were lying. These were part of the Judaizers who were fighting against Paul and what he was doing. They wanted to see Paul stopped. Well, Paul is arrested. He goes in at the end of chapter 21 to have his hair cut in the temple. They arrest him. There's a mob who begins to yell. Look at verse 28. "Men of Israel, help us. This is the man who preaches against our people everywhere, who tells everybody to disobey the Jewish laws. He speaks against the temple and even defiles this holy place by bringing in Gentiles." None of that was true, but it didn't matter. The mob was formed, and they began to rush Paul. Romans, actually in the temple, they're called to the temple to quell the riot. They see what's going on. They take Paul. Paul says to the commander of the Romans, "Let me speak to the crowd." And in chapter 22, he presents his defense. He begins his testimony, how he, like they, was a Jew of Jews. But Jesus appeared to him. And Jesus told him that he would be sent, notice what Paul says, far away to the Gentiles. When he mentions the Gentiles, the mob rushes forward again. The commander takes Paul, takes him aside, tells his officers to lash Paul, to whip him. Paul says to the one who's holding the whip, "Do you dare to whip a man, a Roman citizen, who has not been tried?" The officer goes to his commander and he says he's a Roman citizen. The commander goes back to Paul and says, "Are you a Roman citizen?" Paul says, "Yes, I am." The man says, "I am too. It cost me a lot of money." Paul said, "I was born a Roman citizen." Paul's parents, or perhaps his grandparents, had become Roman citizens, and as a result, all of their children would also be Roman citizens. Well, the Roman commander in chapter 23 releases Paul to the Sanhedrin to be tried. The Sanhedrin begin to question Paul And when Paul realizes this, the Sanhedrin, full of members of the Sadducees and the Pharisees, in chapter 23, verse 6, he shouts out, "Brothers, I am a Pharisee, as were my ancestors. I'm on trial because my hope is in the resurrection of the dead." And immediately a fight breaks out between the Sadducees and the Pharisees. They're no longer interested in Paul. Paul has made this a theological argument. Well, the Roman commander comes back in, he takes Paul, and the next day he plans to take Paul back to the Sanhedrin. But a group of men, about 40, have decided that they would ambush the small guard that would be transferring Paul from the prison to the Sanhedrin and kill Paul. Paul's nephew overhears them talking, goes to the Roman commander, and as a result, the Roman commander says, "Send Paul to Caesarea," the local capital of Roman activity in all of Judea, Caesarea Philippi in Galilee. There, he would be tried by the Roman procurator. Like, follow, and subscribe to this podcast on whatever platform you use to listen to it. Tomorrow, we'll hear what happened in Paul's trial.